At 6, drug deaths in Scotland reach record levels. More than 1,300 people died of drug-related causes last year alone, the worst figures in Europe.
Why is this still happening? Why has this been allowed to continue? Why is these numbers up, death figures up again?
We'll be asking why the number of deaths keeps on rising, also tonight.
All the way! Oh, it looks like she's got it! Bethany Shriver, the first time of
Gold for Beth Shriver, silver for Kai White. Together they make Olympic history, winning Britain's first ever medals in BMX.
I gave it absolutely everything I had then, and I was rewarded. Oh my God, it's amazing.
Pregnant women are urged to have the COVID vaccine as the number of mothers to be in hospital with the virus rises. England's star cricketer Ben Stokes is taking an indefinite break from the sport with immediate effect to prioritise his mental well-being. Human remains found in the Pyrenees are those of the British hiker Esther Dingley, who went missing last November. And warming up for tonight's first night of the Proms as the Royal Albert Hall welcomes back a full audience with no social distancing.
And coming up in sport on the BBC News channel, more from the Tokyo Games as Bryony Page wins bronze for Team GB in the women's trampolining final.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. Scotland's First Minister, Nicola Sturgeon, has said she is determined to make changes that will save lives after the country reported a record number of deaths from drug misuse for the 7th year running. More than 1,300 people died of drug misuse in Scotland last year alone. Almost two-thirds of all drug-related deaths were of people aged between 35 and 54. Scotland's drug death rate continues to be more than 3.5 times that for the UK as a whole. It means Scotland continues to have by far the highest drug death rate recorded by any country in Europe. Our Scotland correspondent Lorna Gordon reports on Scotland's drugs crisis.
It would have been Angela McLaughlin's birthday this week.
Angela had one of the most contagious laughs, smiles, big blue eyes, and everybody loved her.
But like too many others in Scotland, her life lost to drugs.
You miss her?
Every day. Because you feel robbed.
Angela's sister, who's a local councillor, works helping others dealing with addiction in the Ayrshire town of Irvine. She says over recent years there's been no let-up in the numbers dying.
We are hit with a wave after wave after wave. This is like a tsunami coming towards us. How much it can we take?
Waves of deaths.
Waves of deaths. When you hear it every single day, you're consoling families every single day. That's not where I want to be.
The scale of Scotland's problem with drugs has been recognised for some time, but these latest figures are another grim milestone, showing the number of drug-related deaths here rising for the 7th year in a row.
The First Minister made a very honest acknowledgement that we have not done enough in the past that is either big enough or quick enough to tackle the scale of the challenge we face. But we are now determined going forward to invest more in life-saving services.
And there are new initiatives, including this trial where police in some areas, including here in Glasgow, have started carrying naloxone, which rapidly reverses an opioid overdose.
The early indications are that it's very positive. 23 times we've used it, 21 times at least when using it we've helped to save someone's life. There's no doubt that that's very positive.
There was a big gang culture here.
The scale of Scotland's drugs crisis is staggering.
Maybe about 50s or something, there's only about 10 years left or something.
The Scottish Government has committed £250 million to addressing the emergency. But this recovering addict, who's now a community worker, says that money must trickle down.
There's a lot of noise, there's always all this money to be invested, and we're going to have this policy and that policy, but it doesn't do nothing. They need to be invested more in communities, where they know the people, they know the problems they have.
In Glasgow this afternoon, a vigil for those who lost their lives. Their families and friends gathered around a provocative symbol they hope will focus minds on the crisis. They say they're no longer just calling for change, but demanding it.
Well, the Scottish Government says its immediate priority is getting more people into treatment, and that it's committed to ensuring that everyone can access the services they need no matter where they live. But make no mistake, they are under a lot of pressure here. Opposition parties say that SNP government cuts to rehab and other addiction services in recent years have played a big part in the upward trend in drug-related deaths. Well, Nicola Sturgeon today said she knows what's needed isn't words but action to prevent people dying, and she said that is what the Scottish Government is determined to deliver. Sophie.
Lorna, thank you. Now, it's been another bumper day for Team GB at the Tokyo Olympics, with 6 more medals added to the tally overnight. But it was 2 BMX bikers who stole the show today. 21-year-old Bethany Shriver, a teaching assistant who had to crowdfund her way to Tokyo, made history as she won gold in the women's race just moments after her teammate Kai White won silver in the men's event. Our sports correspondent Natalie Perks was watching.
We're no stranger to British cyclists flying the flag at an Olympics, but this time, for the first time, BMX provided the pedal power.
Beautiful technique.
It's a sport of thrills and spills.
And a big slider. The Peckham projectile ready to launch himself onto this course.
For Britain's Kai White, in his first Olympics, this race was a study in composure. Nailed the start.
It's a great start from Kai White.
Hammer the finish.
Yes, it's a silver.
At the BMX club, where his dad was coach, mum was secretary, and older brother a world bronze medalist, the party was in full flow.
It means the world. Changed my life, changed my family life, 100%. I know great opportunities are going to come for this, so yeah, it changes everything.
Bethany Shriver.
But there wasn't time for British BMX to breathe before Beth was off. Making the final was a bonus. A medal wasn't truly in her plans.
There you go, Beth, come on, all the way, there we go.
But as the double Olympic champion, Pahon from Colombia, breathed down her neck, the dream finally became reality.
All the way, all the way!
Oh, and it looks like she's got it! Bethany Shriver, the first time of asking.
On the sidelines, she had her very own hype man. This long course had strained every sinew. And as she collapsed, look who was there to pick her up.
Beth, good work!
Kai wasn't the only one. Beth had needed crowdfunding to get here after UK Sport had axed women's BMX funding after Rio. The irony, this was Britain's first female gold here.
Could you ever have dreamed of this moment? To be honest, no. I dreamed of coming here, but to get a medal, it's just something else. Like I said, it's what every athlete dreams of. But I've worked so hard. I gave it everything I got, and I've been rewarded with this, which is unbelievable.
Where's your medal? Back home in Essex, her proud parents finally caught up with her.
Hey, there it is. What this has done for the sport is just going to be fantastic. More girls will want to do it because they'll see that they can achieve their dreams. Hopefully funding won't be an issue anymore for girls in sport, particularly for BMX.
Beth Shriver didn't lose a race all day, and that truly dominant performance caps Britain's best day in Olympic BMX racing history, from no medals to 2 in 5 frenetic minutes.
From time to time, we all need a lift. In the Olympics game of jeopardy, this pair supported each other to an historic double. Natalie Perks, BBC News, Tokyo.
Well, swimmer Duncan Scott has added yet another medal to his Olympic haul after winning silver in the 200-metre individual medley. He could become the first British Olympian to win 4 medals at a single Games when he races again this weekend. But it has been a very different story for Britain's rowers, their worst performance since 1996, and the first time Team GB rowers have not won a gold at the Olympics since 1980. With more, here's our sports editor, Dan Roan.
Steve is just going to break down. He's breaking down.
For decades, it was Team GB's banker. Britain, the leading rowing nation at the last 3 games, but not anymore.
From Victoria Thornley from Great Britain in 5.
The latest to miss out on a medal, Vicky Thornley in the singles sculls. The 6th time a British boat has finished 4th here as the team sank to 14th in the rowing medal table.
The British now have got a hold of Germany. It is Great Britain from
The men's
Germany.
8 managed bronze, but it completed the squad's worst Olympics for more than 40 years.
There's no doubt we can't escape the fact that the British team haven't performed the way that we have in the last 5, 6, editions of the Olympic Games. So on one level, it's disappointing. I don't think there are many questions to ask of the athletes. I think they have performed out of their skins.
This is the first time Team GB's rowers have not won gold since 1980, despite being the country's best-funded sport, and the recriminations have begun. The role of legendary but controversial former head coach Jürgen Grobler, who left last year after almost 3 decades of success, has split the squad. Some missing him, others attacking his treatment of athletes. The man in charge now admits Britain's at risk of being left behind.
I think we've got to make some significant changes to really step up. We've got to look at the analysis of what the other countries in the world are doing that we're not doing. We've got a great base and a great model that's given us performances over the years, but everyone else is starting to move forward and we've got to move forward with them.
But coming is Duncan Scott in the red hats.
British swimming is another well-funded sport, but it's been going in the right direction. A second gold of the Games may have narrowly eluded Duncan Scott earlier, but his 3 medals here are more than any British swimmer has managed at an Olympics in over a century. The Scotsman now among Team GB's most decorated ever athletes. Luke Greenbank secured bronze in the 200-metre backstroke, although when asked, he then questioned whether it was a clean race after Evgeny Rylov won, with Russia still under suspicion following their state-sponsored doping scandal.
It's obviously a very difficult situation, not knowing whether who you're racing against is clean, but it's something that I think is part of the sport, and if I'm honest, more needs to be done to kind of tackle that.
But little detracts from Team GB's achievements here. With a haul of 6 medals now and the prospect of more to come, these have been a breakthrough games for British swimming. After years of struggling to compete with the likes of the United States, they've now established themselves as a real powerhouse in the sport. What lies behind this resurgence, do you think?
Way back in 2015, Petey winning his first World Championship, I think the way that he goes about his business, so professional, it does rub off on people. The coaches as well that the athletes get to work with day in, day out, there's so many that have constant strive to improve. I think that means, and it's so special to a lot of the swimmers.
And in the relays this weekend, Scott can become the first British Olympian to win 4 medals in a single Games. Not yet a household name, but on the verge of history. Dan Rowan, BBC News, Tokyo.
Well, elsewhere at the Games, Bryony Page picked up a bronze for Team GB in the gymnastic trampolining final, but shock for the women's football team, who have been knocked out at the quarter-final stage. Here's our sports correspondent, Andy Swiss.
When it comes to the art of bouncing back, well, Bryony Page is an expert. After winning silver at the last Games, she spent 2 years out with an ankle injury, but once again, she rose to the occasion.
Whoa, well done, Bryony!
A bronze medal, a brilliant result after such a difficult build-up.
I woke up this morning feeling like something was off. I had a little cry to my coach, so I'm really, really happy. I had really low confidence at the start of the day, so to get a medal, just absolutely over the moon.
Meanwhile, Britain has 2 guaranteed medals in the boxing after Pat McCormack and Ben Whittaker roared into the semis. Whittaker, it seems, though, wants more than just victory.
I want to go back with a gold medal and I want to become the mayor of Wolverhampton. I want one of those nice chains on my neck and I'll be calling all the shots. Everybody in Wolverhampton will have a nice ice grill and a nice big chain, courtesy of Ben Whittaker.
On the first day of athletics, Dina Asher-Smith confirmed her status as a contender in the 100 metres as she eased into the semi-finals. Other British hopes, though, are over in a matter of minutes for Lawrence Okoye. 3 no throws, and his discus dream was dashed. The women's football team are also out. After missing a penalty in extra time, they lost their quarter-final 4-3 to Australia. And there was a big shock in the tennis.
And he's done it!
Alexander Zverev knocking out Wimbledon champion Novak Djokovic. And for those who wonder whether the Olympics mean as much to tennis's millionaires, well, his tears tell the answer. Andy Swiss, BBC News.
So at the end of day 7 of the Games, Team GB remains 6th in the medals table with 6 golds and 24 medals in total. While all eyes are on the Games, Japan is facing a surge in COVID cases, with the country extending a state of emergency in Tokyo and expanding it to new regions. Streetlights in the capital were switched off to try and raise awareness of the situation, but hundreds came out to watch it instead. The Prime Minister warned that infections are spreading at an unprecedented rate in a country where less than 30% are fully vaccinated. It's been announced tonight that the England cricket star Ben Stokes is taking an indefinite break from all cricket with immediate effect. Our sports correspondent Laura Scott joins us now, and we're told it's for reasons of mental health.
Yes, I mean, in the last hour, the ECB's issued a statement saying that he's stepping back to prioritise his mental well-being and to rest an injured finger. The ECB's offered Stokes their full support, praised his courage in speaking out and said they will give him as long as he needs. But this is a really significant loss for England. Stokes is a talismanic figure, both on and off the pitch, and it comes after a really testing time for players, this constant bubble environment over the last 16 months or so, really taking its toll on players' mental health. But Stokes personally has also been dealing with the death of his father. There's a packed schedule coming up, a series against India and an Ashes series already in doubt because of the length of time players would spend away from their families, and you get the sense this withdrawal could lead to further scrutiny of the demand on players.
Laura Scott, thank you. The family of a British woman who went missing in the Pyrenees mountain range in November last year say the human remains that were found there are hers. 37-year-old Esther Dingley was hiking alone on the French-Spanish border when she vanished. Lucy Williamson reports.
One last smile captured on a mountain peak. A moment of happiness shared in a message to her boyfriend before Esther Dingley disappeared from the world. She and her boyfriend Dan spent the past 7 years travelling around Europe in a camper van, swapping successful careers for freedom on the road. The travel blog they ran, charting their journey through Switzerland, Italy, France and Spain. Esther had been hiking alone near the French-Spanish border. On November the 22nd, she sent her last picture from the Salvaguardia peak. 8 months later, her remains were found here, beside a hiking trail at Port de la Glere. Search teams combed the mountain trails for months. Last week, one small piece of her bone was found, along with animal remains, the first proof that she had died nearby. But with no sign of her equipment or clothing, the story of what happened is still unclear. Esther's family said in a statement today they were distraught. We've known for many months that the chance we would get to hug our beloved Esther again was tiny, they said, but that small hope has now faded. It's devastating beyond words. Last year, her partner Dan told the BBC that Esther had been a competent trekker and well prepared.
Esther and I have walked, I don't know how many thousand miles together. We did a 3-month trek. She's done solo treks on her own several times. She's very competent, very confident, and she had all the equipment with her to stay safe. She was doing what she absolutely loved to do. I've never seen her as happy as she has been the past few weeks.
A friend described Esther as sensitive, caring and clever, always driven to succeed. A woman who gave up the life she felt was expected for 7 amazing years of the life she was meant to have. Lucy Williamson, BBC News, Paris.
The time is coming up to 6:20, our top story this evening. Drug deaths in Scotland reach a new record level. The country has the worst drug-related death rate in Europe. And coming up, the Proms are back. We speak to the musicians preparing to take to the stage.
And coming up on Sports Day on the BBC News channel, we hear from the families of Bethany Shriver and Kai White as they make history in Tokyo, winning Britain's first Olympic medals in BMX racing.
Pregnant women are being urged to get the COVID jab as soon as possible as the number of mothers in hospital with the virus rises. Estimates based on Public Health England data suggest that hundreds of thousands of pregnant women have not had the jab. England's chief midwife says they should do so to protect themselves and their babies. Our health correspondent Catherine Burns has the story.
At London's Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, an antenatal clinic with a difference. Mums-to-be having vaccines at the same time as routine scans and blood tests.
I just thought it was important to have it to protect me and the baby now as well.
I was really nervous before I had it done, and then I did a bit more reading and thought, actually, this is perfect.
I kind of just want to do the best thing for my baby, and I was really scared about getting COVID.
Catching COVID during pregnancy puts the mother and baby at extra risk. So the chief midwife for England is encouraging anyone who's pregnant to get their jab.
We want mums and babies to be safe, and indeed their families, and that's why we encourage and urge every pregnant woman in England today to seek some wise counsel, speak to a health professional, and indeed choose to have the vaccine.
Across London at King's College Hospital, they have about 20 births a day, and about 2 of the mums have COVID.
Most women who get COVID in pregnancy will sail through and be absolutely fine, but we see a small number of women who come in with severe breathing difficulties who we have to act rapidly. They go on ventilators, have to have an emergency delivery for their baby. And from our point of view, it feels tragic because these women will now be almost certainly unvaccinated, and we know that if they'd been vaccinated, it could have been avoided.
Avoided because vaccines can make all the difference. Since February, 742 pregnant women have been admitted to hospital with COVID symptoms. Almost all, 738, have not been vaccinated. 4 have had a single dose. None were double jabbed. Initially, pregnant women were told they should only get the vaccine if they had a higher chance of catching COVID or had underlying health problems. Since April, though, the advice has been clear. You should get vaccinated during pregnancy. Even so, the best estimates suggest that 9 in 10 pregnant women are not taking up the vaccine. Iona's first baby is due in 10 weeks. She's struggling to decide whether to get vaccinated or not. She's worried about what would happen if she caught COVID, but has concerns about the vaccine.
Because it's so new, I think that's why I'm still hesitating. So I think that's what's keeping me from getting vaccinated.
Almost 200,000 pregnant women across America and the UK have had at least 1 dose with no safety issues. Meanwhile, though, there are signs the Delta variant is affecting pregnant women more severely. In the first wave, 1/4 of pregnant women in hospital with COVID had moderate or severe disease. Now it's closer to half. Catherine Burns, BBC News.
The number of daily coronavirus cases has fallen slightly. The latest government figures show there were 29,622 new cases in the latest 24-hour period, meaning an average of 28,272 new cases per day in the past 7 days. 68 deaths were recorded in the last 24 hours. That's an average of 72 deaths a day in the past week. The number of people in hospital with COVID has fallen back below 6,000. More than 88% of UK adults have now had their first jab, and nearly 72% are now fully vaccinated. A man has been sentenced for assaulting England's chief medical officer in central London last month. Footage, which was shared on social media, showed 2 men grabbing Professor Chris Whitty, who struggled to free himself. Well, Helena Wilkinson is at Westminster Magistrates Court for us. Now, tell us what happened.
Well, Sophie, Professor Whitty had been walking through a park on his way to see the Prime Minister when he was accosted. Today, Lewis Hughes, 24 years old and from Essex, the court heard that he put the professor in a loose headlock after he declined to have a photograph taken. Well, District Judge Paul Goldspring today described Hughes as a yob. He sentenced him to 8 weeks in prison, suspended for 2 years, and ordered him to pay compensation of £100 to Professor Whitty. The court also heard that Hughes was unreservedly apologetic for the distress that he had caused. Now, there was a second man who appeared here today, 24-year-old Jonathan Chew, also from Essex. He will face a trial in November. He pleaded not guilty to the same charge and also denied obstructing a police officer. And the court also heard that Professor Whitty will be called to give evidence in court.
Helena, thank you. And let's take a look at some of today's other news now. And a group of MPs have raised serious concerns after finding 56 migrants, including vulnerable children and young people, held in a cramped office in Dover. They've written to the Home Secretary, Priti Patel, describing the conditions as wholly inappropriate. The Home Office says it takes migrants' welfare extremely seriously and is working to process them as quickly and safely as possible. An 18-year-old steward who was working at the Euro 2020 final has admitted stealing wristbands, official lanyards and high-vis jackets to allow ticketless fans to get into Wembley Stadium. Youssef Amin made £4,500 selling the stolen goods. Campaigners have won a legal battle to stop Highways England putting the main road past Stonehenge, the A303, inside a 2-mile-long tunnel. The High Court ruled that the Transport Secretary, Grant Shapps, didn't properly consider the risk of harm to the World Heritage Site. It's likely the project will now be frozen while ministers consider their next steps. Tonight is the first night of the Proms at the Royal Albert Hall, one of the highlights of the cultural calendar. And for the first time since 2019, audiences will be back, though only allowed in if they have proof of a negative COVID test or are double jabbed. People will also be encouraged to wear masks. More than 2,000 musicians from 30 orchestras will play every day over the next 6 weeks as live music returns on a scale not seen in the UK since the start of the pandemic. Mark Savage reports.
The Royal Albert Hall, as Finnish maestro Dalia Stasiewska prepares to welcome back a full audience for the first time in 2 years. Tonight, she conducts the BBC Symphony Orchestra, who will remain socially distanced on a specially extended stage. And how strict are they?
We have a guy with a ruler.
What's it like to be back?
We have been waiting over a year to have full audience, and I think that we are all emotional and we are going to play really our hearts out with this concert.
And what's the moment of the concert you're most looking forward to?
Just to hear the people clapping and the whole ritual just to start, the silence and the waiting when the first note starts to play.
Last year's Proms ended on a controversial note for Dalia, after the BBC announced, and then reversed, a decision not to sing the lyrics of the patriotic songs Rule Britannia and Land of Hope and Glory.
I've kind of moved forward from all of that, and what I really want to say that I'm extremely proud that the whole last night actually came together at all.
And there were some false reports that it had been your decision.
Well, media has its own way of telling stories, and we have our own way to tell a story. It's through the music.
And the first piece played at this year's Proms tells a story of its own.
Vaughan Williams' Serenade to Music, it was chosen because we really wanted to celebrate music. Really, the whole night is about new beginnings and celebrating together.
And when it's all over, how are you going to feel?
I think that after the journey that we have made during this 1.5 years, and that we finish the concert and we have the audiences there, I think it will feel like a great victory.
Classical music, Dalia says, has a healing quality, something that's never been as important as now. Mark Savage, BBC News.
To the weather now, and the Met Office has issued weather warnings and flood warnings as Storm Evert moves eastwards across Britain. It's already caused damage and disruption in the southwest of England. The Isles of Scilly were badly affected, with gusts of wind reaching up to 75 miles an hour. Falmouth Coast Guard said it responded to more than 20 incidents off the islands. Back on the mainland, campsites were badly affected. These campers had to hold on tight in Polzeth, and this was the scene at a site 30 miles away in Perranporth. Holidaymakers had to sleep in their cars. Well, let's have a proper look at the weather now. Helen Willits, good old British summer.
A little, isn't it, Sophie? Yes, our summer storm, certainly has whipped up some strong winds today in excess of 70 miles an hour, particularly in the southwest, but it's been pretty blustery this afternoon as the strongest winds transferred eastwards. And this is the circulation, this is the storm. It's also given quite a soaking. In the last hour or two, over 30 millimetres of rain has fallen in parts of Lincolnshire. You can see the flashes of lightning here as well. So it's a double whammy. Our Storm Ava then will move out into the North Sea as we go through the night. So once those storms have rumbled themselves out, we'll be left with some cloud and patchy rain in eastern areas, the showers elsewhere easing, the winds easing away. Not a cold night, though, with all the breeze and the cloud to start with. But the breeze changes direction tomorrow, and by that stage it will be a breeze rather than the gales or severe gales we've had today. And they come right the way down from the north. So I think this weekend it's going to feel a bit cool for the time of year. But there'll be some sunshine and there'll be a scattering of showers. So it doesn't look as windy tomorrow. It should be a drier start. We should have some sunshine, particularly warm in the sunshine in the south. But you can see this weather front slipping southwards, the focus from heavier showers, thunderstorms into the afternoon again, northeastern areas. And really, actually, just about anywhere in England and Wales could see those slow-moving downpours as the winds are lighter. But it does look drier for many parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland once the early rain moves away from the east. But look, just 13 or 14 in the north of Scotland with that breeze. And that breeze pushes right the way south by Sunday. So I think we'll all notice it feeling cooler on Sunday. But once again, a similar setup. Plenty of dry weather in the north and the west, so Scotland, Northern Ireland, Northern England, and perhaps the focal point for the showers further south, more limited if you like, but the temperatures are a little lower. But again, as we're seeing, those showers could be slow moving, heavy and thundery with some hail as well. Sophie.
Hail, Helen, thank you. That's all from the BBC News at 6. It's goodbye from me, and on BBC One we join the BBC's news teams where you are. Goodbye.